three things. Let's start with a little acknowledgement. Let's start also with a thank you and then an explanation. So the acknowledgement is that these are unusual times, right? So you may have noticed that the news stories about what's happening in Ukraine and all the things that are going on are occupying a lot of mind share. So I just want to wish you well as you process through that, because those can feel like dark and uncertain times. But I also want to remind you that for many of our students, this will be the first of the situations they ever encounter where geopolitical politics plays a role in their lives and their worries. You know, when a student experiences economic trends or changes for the first time, or when they see something that happens, they bring that with them. And so I want to wish you well in thinking through what is the best way to help and support students as they also are trying to process all of this. And I know I can count on great professionals to give that thought. So the other thing I want to do is thank you all for being here. These are very busy times and so forth. So trying to piece out a little bit of time here and there for professional development, you have our admiration. We appreciate your willingness to do that. And the third is I just want to offer an explanation, because what in the world is the novation anyway, right? Sometimes people think that that's just a word that we made up, and that's not really true. It turns out that it's a fairly obscure but still used legal term, and it has to do with agreements between parties, right? So novation is generally reserved for a time when an agreement between two good parties of good faith want to take an agreement and make it even better. And the two parties that we're talking about at this point are both in the ECC community. They are, for example, ESL. And if you have little exposure or experience to ESL, I really hope that you'll invest some time to learn about this outstanding program that goes on. It's a nation-leading program. They're doing incredible and innovative things. And I hope that you'll learn a little bit about the kinds of things that you can be proud about. And if, as auspicious a group as the Aspen Institute has told us 4 separate times now, that of the 1,400 plus community colleges around the nation that we're in the top 150, I think it's time for us to believe them, right? And there's lots and lots of good things that are happening in the greater academic community where many of us live and teach and do things of that kind. So the novation in this case is between that great ESL program and the great opportunities that we have to be able to tie together closer with the academic world and the opportunities that our ESL students might be able to face if they take advantage of those things. So let's move the slide forward a little bit. One of the things that I most appreciate about TeachECC is that it's really pragmatic and well-intended. I don't know about you, but it is really annoying to go to a conference where people have something to sell, either an idea or even worse, a book, you know, and you spend a lot of time dealing with that agenda. Or when it really becomes an exercise in showing off and ego, you know, driven, look at me, aren't we great? And so I appreciate that that's not the focus here. So what we are going to do is tell you a little bit about our story, just enough so that you have a context for what it is that we're doing. We're justifiably proud, I think, of our students and the things that they've accomplished, but that's less important than you kind of having an idea of what we're doing and how we were able to use some of what are commonly called the high impact practices and so forth. Then what we want to do, more importantly in my mind, is that we'll zero in on those practices. We'll talk about what they are, et cetera, and try and give you a fairly candid view of what it took to put them together and how it worked for us, but leading to the idea of what's most important, and that is how it might work for you. What are the possibilities that it creates? What are the things you might do? And we want to be really candid with you about how these things are. We're not trying to sell any of these ideas, but we are hoping to expose them, right? And finally, our intrepid researcher, Stacy Shaw, has done some really nice work in thinking about what comes next. And if there are interesting things you want to take a look at and evaluate and consider further, she's got some ideas for you. So let's go on and take a look at this. On the next slide, you're going to see that we're going to have a little visual trick here. And that is that anytime you see something that is highlighted in red, that represents a high impact practice that we used. And what will happen is we'll kind of tell you the story of how it all fit together. And then we'll break those practices out more specifically so we can talk about how they might apply to you. But the NOVATION project began with the idea of a learning community. The normal definition of a learning community is it's something that happens in the academic side of things where two instructors or more work together and where the students attend all of the same things. We've taken some slight liberties with that because we have students that are part of ESL, and we also and will invite other students who don't necessarily have a need for ESL to be part of the experience as a whole. But it began with that idea of a learning community, which means working together to figure out what it is that we're going to get done. Now, as we move to the next slide, you'll see that we added something more about that. And one of the good sessions that I hope that I don't know whether it's happened already, Tyler, but it has to do with the idea of the embedded librarian program. It's a great program, and I really endorse the idea of it. What we wanted to do is take it even further, something that Stacy will share with you about that. So we'll call that the library partnership. And so this really became a trio of people that were working to put all of these things together. As we go a little bit further, we also used a technique that is tried and true. It's been used for many years, actually had its origin in the World War II, post-World War II era. It's been used selectively ever since. And that's the idea of service learning, where you involve helping others while you are teaching. And in this case, we employed the idea of the guiding question about NOVATION. How could ECC improve the synergies between the good adult learning things that are happening, and then also tie it together even more tightly with the academic community? You'll notice also that one of the things that we try and do is come up with a realistic scope. So for example, asking students to brainstorm something that would involve building a new building or hiring new people or adding to our budget is just not a realistic option. So we add the constraints of real life that says, what can we do with what we have and how are we doing it? That makes the job a little tougher, but it also makes it more realistic, and it makes the results a whole lot more practical. A little bit more about how we did that in a minute. Let's go to the next slide as we talk about the idea of how all of that worked as well. Okay, so there we go. Good. So what was the process all about? Well, in our particular case, what happened was we took a garden variety communications program. It's a first year experience for many, many students. And it involves them experimenting with preparing, building, and then delivering presentations. What we did was try to adjust those standard presentations to something that would be useful in the process of getting that service mission done. So for example, that informative speech, which every student takes when they take a speech class, we called that the fact book. And the fact book was finding out a little bit more about this whole area of services that are available. That idea of persuasive speech, also universal in a speech class, we called that the K phase. And the K phase was the idea of saying, if we were looking to persuade people, say in ESL, to take the risk of trying classes, how would we do it? Or even to learn about other services, what would we do? Much of what happened also lies in the interesting high impact practice of team presentation, because people have to work together, think together, rehearse together, and work things through. But we also added another element. The culminating thing resulted in a report that was delivered to President Sam and to the cabinet with what we thought were specific ideas of things that could be done. So a part of that, the practice of collaborative work, and another part of that, the very important idea of integrated support, really, really critical about how we get things done. So now let's take a closer look at that project and also the practices behind it. So Erin, talk to us, tell us about that.
Right, so I'm Erin Vibornik. I am the ESL teacher for this trio. And I had also previously been an ESL supervisor, so I kind of saw the behind the scenes, the discussions of things that our department wanted to do. And then when I shifted to a faculty member back in like 2018, that's when I shifted back. So this idea right here, this scaffold, as we called it, the ES Elevate, is built partially on an idea that had been thrown around previously. And then obviously with the pandemic, things got put on hold, right? Our needs became serving those that we have right now, as well as trying to maintain enrollment. And now that we're kind of settled, we're going back to these ideas now. And part of what we wanted to talk about to the ESL department was kind of this scaffold here of there are ways of integrating services into the 10 different levels that we have and kind of making it a series of steps. And then our students within our learning community kind of took those ideas and focused in on five main aspects, which was taking fear head on. That was focused on fears of being undocumented, not knowing what that means in a community college. A student spoke to the fact that she thought that that meant that she couldn't take college classes because she wouldn't be able to get any sort of degree. And that was kind of something that had been spreading in the undocumented community. So she mentioned about how, you know, we should be very explicit in our support of all students. Another student who is also a teacher I believe she's a substitute teacher, and she also works at the Ukrainian school in the city, was talking about how we need to actually support faculty. You know, we can, easy to say, let's integrate all of this into our levels. And she kind of broke it down into ways that faculty could be supported in doing that. Another student spoke about creating ESL student service options, ways to kind of better support some of the things and the people who we have in ESL and across the campus. This idea of ESL student ambassadors who might learn about a particular service like career services and then bring that information back to the ESL community in a way that's meaningful for them. Another student talked about developing alumni opportunities. So an alumni network, a way to celebrate our students who have completed our program or who have made large gains in our program, making their stories public, right? Celebrating them as a way to motivate students and to make them feel more part of the community. And then lastly, to expand exposure to student services, really about tailoring the messaging of services to ESL students and kind of thinking through what kind of support they need that differs from that of, say, the rest of the campus. So to kind of focus in on what we did, what our practices are, I'll focus here on the learning community aspect. So the speech class was asynchronous online. My ESL class was synchronous online with some asynchronous work on D2L, but we would meet 2 times a week for 2.5 hours, I think, each time. And then Stacy, our embedded librarian, had access to both of our courses. And in fact, we all had access to everyone else's courses. So there are a lot of hands in the pot, which made communication really important. So you don't accidentally mess up somebody's D2L class. But it was also really helpful because I could see what kinds of questions were being asked by John in his class. I could see the way that students were responding, and I could build that into my class. So how did students respond to the learning community? And this is an actual quote from one of our students. She said, I took the Speech 101 ESL Level 10 learning community because I want to get support from both classes and improve my communication skill. So she specifically sought out the learning community to have that extra support rather than enrolling in speech on its own. So exactly what does it entail, right? We don't want to paint this as being super easy. So it did require a lot of communication between John and I, and this is the third learning community that we've taught together. And I would say this is the one that we have corresponded on the most because it has involved a lot of moving parts. And of course, with Stacy there as well, she was involved in all of our weekly meetings that we had. The other challenge was being partially or fully remote. Took some maneuvering. And for some of our students who had some digital literacy challenges, that was a hurdle that a student would have to get over before she could really feel comfortable in the class as well. Okay, and I'll let Stacy take away the library partnership.
Thank you, Erin. So this was a really special project, I think, for doing this library partnership as this practice. So for those who might not know, librarians are faculty at ECC, and we teach. And our traditional models of teaching are usually at the reference desk. And also generally in the past has been one-shot library sessions. And there's a lot of benefit to these models because it, especially with a reference desk. And when I say reference desk, I don't just mean the physical desk, but also all the different ways we do reference through Zoom, through chat, through email. But these are designed to be like point of need for students, and also they give kind of a low stakes atmosphere. So we don't grade students, so that it's a very safe kind of space for them. But there are also challenges to these models. In particular, I'm really interested in the equity aspect of it. So these models, they prioritize the transaction between librarian and student over building relationships. And for some of our students, that can be, especially our students who are maybe come from marginalized populations, that can be a real challenge. Recently, a librarian from Portland Community College named Meredith Farkas wrote that we will never serve our population equitably with this waiting for students to come to us model, which privileges those who naturally feel comfortable seeking help from us. And in fact, earlier, Erin had a session earlier this week for TeachECC when she talked about some of the barriers for students. Some of our students are the kind of hidden curriculum and the unofficial rules and procedures and structures that some students may not be familiar with, and that can, again, present a barrier. When I started as a librarian at ECC about 13 years ago, the challenge was serving our online and distance students and providing them access to library instruction. And so we created this embedded librarianship program. And what that means is we embed librarians into the D2L course, as I was in this learning community. And some of the benefits of that are not just not just serving online students. And again, we do it for all kinds of classes. So we do it for enhanced classes, hybrid classes, but also the fact that the librarian can build somewhat of a relationship with the students by being present in the class throughout the semester. And the other kind of advantage, one of the problems with the one-shot library session is we're finding it's not working as well as we see faculty start to break down research process and do that kind of scaffolding that we talked about a little bit more, that if the librarian's only there one session and then they're not there anymore, that they're not there throughout the process. And that's something that my colleague Beth Holtman talked about earlier this week with Kellen Bolt, that sometimes having the librarian there for more of the process is really helpful. And in an embedded model, we have that advantage also that we're there for the whole semester. But this was taking it one step further and really integrating the librarian as a teaching partner and part of the collaboration for this project. And that was really a great experience for me to be able to be involved in the team meetings. It meant that I got information, for example, about students who may have digital literacy challenges, so that in my approach to the students, I could tailor them and personalize and be more effective. And it was really rewarding working with both John and Erin, who are very much, I would say, practice like a holistic pedagogy where they really get to know the students and know them really well. And then they provide the really tailored support for those students. And so I was able to join in that process too. So again, I was there as an embedded librarian. I had access to the platform that John uses called Go React, where I could see the speeches. And that's something often I don't get as a librarian, is to actually see the products that our students create, because that can help me, again, keep assisting them throughout their whole research process. And then I was able to do synchronous sessions. So I did a session, an instruction session in Zoom for Erin's portion of the class. And then I was kind of invited to drop in whenever I could. So anytime I could. And so I became a presence in the class. And that really helped when I went to talk to students individually, because they knew who I was, and that trust was already starting to form. So in terms of students' response, it was relationship building and getting that sort of trust that I think is really crucial. And if you were here, I don't know when it was, a few years ago, when J. Luke Wood spoke, he talked a lot about relationship building as really key as an equitable practice for students, and barrier reduction. And then the other response is that our students in this learning community produced great research. They had the ability to work with academic articles, they did reports, they looked at all kinds of kind of traditional academic research, but they also went beyond that, and they did some reaching out to areas on campus, interviewing people. So they went to a deeper level of research, which I think was really impressive. And it was an honor to be able to help them facilitate that kind of research. And then in terms of the real deal, one of the things I think about, we had a fairly small learning community, so this was really doable. So some things to think about: how would this look with a larger class population? So it might be slightly different, but I still really think there are some great opportunities for this deeper collaboration between teaching faculty and librarians that can have a lot of impact on students. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Erin.
I just want to brag on Stacy for a second, because in our ESL classes, we sometimes, depending on the weather, we'll take in previous times, would take like a physical trip over to the library. Somebody would do a presentation for us. And then back in the classroom, we'd, maybe talk about the library again, but students wouldn't remember who presented. They wouldn't remember the person's name. And in our students' reflections of this course, they referred to Stacy by name. They had emailed with her, spoken with her so many times. She was part of this, and students felt that as well. So now to go back to that guiding question and the scope. So our guiding question got narrowed from all of Building K down to ESL students, I think in just about one or two classes of discussing it. Because although one of our students did have experience getting her high school equivalency, all of the other students in our learning community were ESL students only. And so and this was partially them saying, we can speak on behalf of ESL students because that's what we are. We don't necessarily understand the perspectives and experiences of the high school equivalency side. And due to time, we didn't really have the ability to dig into that. So we decided to focus just on ESL students. And then again, we wanted for our scope to maximize the chance of implementation by going for low cost and high need ideas. So we didn't want to say, well, you could just hire a few more full-time faculty members. That's not something that is going to happen, at least not not soon. And we wanted, again, to keep this momentum, to keep this ball rolling so that we could have, so that students could see change while they were here and so they could have a lasting impact. And one of our students responded by saying, wow, it was a very surprising project for me. And she said that she didn't know about all the benefits to her as a student. So apart from just the impact on the ESL community that our students had, they were greatly impacted by seeing all of the opportunities that were available to them. And one of the students who is part of our learning community is actually looking to get involved in student government now because she sees an opportunity and a place for her on ECC's main campus. So the real deal here, it helped to have experts. We were focused on ECC for this service learning project so that we didn't have to coordinate with outside partners. We had connections within the college and we have expertise within the college. And again, it ended up working fantastically because the students were able to learn about the college and help the college at the same time. And the timing was good because, we're looking at the strategic plan, our next strategic plan. And so we thought, this, and I shouldn't say we thought, John really said, hey, the strategic plan is coming up. This would be a fantastic way for students to have some input. The time is now. So our experts, John is an expert in many things. And one of them is just how ECC functions and also its history. I've learned more from him about the history of ECC than I did in that when I was hired here, I got like a history of ECC book, which is beautiful. I still have it in my office. And Stacy, she knows what is happening in many departments across campus, and her expertise was pivotal in being able to reach that deeper research that she mentioned by connecting our students with experts across campus and making that introduction for them, which was huge. And then lastly, my expertise is in adult education, what it means, how it functions, what our grant requirements are, because we not only serve a different community, but we also are run differently than main campus because we are grant funded. So having expertise in what our service learning project was focused on was very helpful. So if we look in on service learning here, so our technique was that we wanted it to be challenging. We wanted to set high expectations and then really focus on supporting students so that they could reach those high expectations. Right off of the bat, John was helping to make commitments. So reaching out and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. I think right after we had told the students, this is what we're doing, he reached out across campus and said, hey, we're doing this, keep an eye out. And then we help to prepare students intellectually and emotionally for this. And because our students are adults, and there are adults who, some of them have advanced degrees in other countries, intellectually, at least on my end, I didn't have to support them too much intellectually. It was really the emotional support for me. So John kind of tackled both of those as well, and as did Stacy, because she helped them with the research and helped them emotionally, because for them, presenting a speech in a language that is not their first language is challenging. It's hard enough for me to do it in my first language. And, this was their first speech class. For some of them, their first college credit class in the United States. And then we throw on top of it, hey, we're going to do a service learning project. We're going to present this to many people. And they certainly were a bit scared in the beginning, and their reaction was, we can't do this. This is beyond us. And by the end, it was, we're scared, but we can do this. And then, of course, recognizing their contributions. So how students responded, yep, it scared them. I can't believe that we did this. I proved to myself, I see myself differently now. And as a teacher, that was the big thing. This is why I love service learning, and I loved this semester, is because at the end, students really did see themselves differently. I could see a difference in them. They articulated that difference of feeling empowered, feeling confident. And it was just amazing to see. So the real deal here, how do you get to that point of seeing students with that change? So ongoing communications is essential. So ongoing communications, not just between the faculty members who are involved in that part of it, but ongoing communications within ECC's community or whoever you're partnering with, as well as kind of nearly constant communication with the students as to, okay, this is who we reached out to. This is how things are going, because again, they're partners in learning within the service learning model. And then of course, managing expectations, right? Our expectation was, we're going to present this to kind of a group of people who have influence and power to make these things happen. We don't know what will come of it, but we're going to try. And what has come of it is meetings where some of these things might actually get put into practice, which is fantastic. And then of course, resolving any performance issues is also critical. So, kind of recognizing their performance as it changes, it grows, and it improves. All right, so the collaborative work, we've kind of discussed the collaborative work as we've gone, but just to kind of narrow in, our technique was that we would have weekly team meetings between John, Stacy, and myself, where we would meet each week for an hour and kind of plan what was coming up, reflect on what has happened, and brainstorm any student supports. So for example, Stacy might say, oh, the student reached out and wants to be connected with somebody so that they can do an interview. And we would, it would just kind of be on our radar. So we knew that was happening, took the pressure off of the student to have to update 3 different teachers about what was happening in their research and their work. And then also discussing, oh, hey, this student, she seems to be really having some challenges. How can we reach out to her? What kind of resources can we provide? And as a way to kind of work together. So students responded really well to that collaborative work. And one student said, I was nervous and stressed before each presentation. However, thanks to the enthusiastic support of both Professors Aaron, John, and librarian Stacy, my presentation got better. So again, all of that planning was worth it because students were seeing that change. So the real deal, those weekly meetings were time consuming, and it really was a lot of planning. It wasn't a lot of chit chat. It was, what can we do next? Who needs to reach out to whom? How do we make sure that all of our supports are complementary? and not contrasting each other at all or not duplicating work. It was a lot of work behind the scenes to set students up for success. And John did just a phenomenal amount of work raising awareness of the project. He set up guest speakers. So Dr. Sum and Dr. Heinrich came in to speak to our students, which just blew them away. They were actually moved to tears in those meetings because they felt it was really a pivotal moment in them feeling as if they belonged on campus, as well as him reaching out to the student publication to get someone to come in and kind of interview students about what this project is, and as well as saying, hey, we should do TeachECC. So there was a lot to build up to this success, and also something to keep in mind is it's not just a lot of planning before the semester happens. It is near constant planning throughout the duration of the service learning and the learning community. Okay. So you get to listen to me once more. So our team presentation and publication, again, we had our students present in front of deans, associate deans, members from the cabinet, and from the library as well. And this was to provide students with the real experience of presenting to key stakeholders. And you know, in my adult ed mind, I'm thinking, you know, this plays to essential employability skills. This is self-advocacy. There are so many channels where having that real experience of talking to stakeholders, somebody in a position or a position of power or of perceived power and influence can really be a monumental experience for students. It was also, again, to actually be able to take these ideas and have something happen. So our goal wasn't, let's give students this experience. The goal was, let's really make a difference. And students bought into that and ran with it 100%. And as you can see, they said, you know, talking to the audience was something new. It was challenging. But going back to that, you know, but new experiences teach me something new. It brings me to the upper level of learning, and that keeps me more motivated. And students really were motivated because they were part of a team. And so they knew others were relying upon them. It's a little harder to slack off. Not our ESL students never really slack off, but it's harder to do that when you know that other people need your contribution to be able to do their own. So kind of the challenges that we came up against is in Zoom presentations, there are drawbacks and benefits. So the drawback is that, you know, it is Zoom, so you don't have that energy of being in a real room. But the benefit, you know, and also, you know, technology issues, but the benefit was that we had a greater chance of getting people into the room. And I think we had 12 or 13 stakeholders present for our students to present in front of in that Zoom room. And they were active in the chat. So it was nice that students were able to have so many people present. And also it had the recording function, which allowed students to kind of have this capsule of this work that they completed that they can use, they can look back on either just as a point of pride for what they've accomplished, or to look back on in order to improve, something to be able to show to employers, or whatever their goal is with it, they have that and it's saved there. Okay.
Okay, and oh, sorry. Thanks, Erin. So I'm just going to talk about looking deeper into it. So we've presented kind of our practices, but just to tie it back to high impact practices that we use throughout this. And this is a TeachECC kind of theme for the week. But in case you're wondering, I took this definition from, or this definition from the National Association of System Heads, which has a really good educator's guide to high impact practices. But again, they're engaged teaching and learning practices that are evidence-based and that really have been shown to benefit students from different backgrounds, especially students of color and first generation students. And if it also sounds familiar to you, the From Equity Talk to Equity Walk, which was a kind of campus read, and we had Dr. Tia Brown McNair present opening day last fall, but high impact practices were mentioned a lot in that book as a way of moving again from equity talk to actually active equity walk. And if you can advance the slide, Erin. So this Tyler shared during the kickoff for TeachECC, but this is from the American Association of Colleges and Universities and some of their high impact practices. So I tried to bold the practices again that we did in this NOVATION project, some of the ones we pulled out. These are just a list. I know that for this may be intimidating, thinking about, well, how can I incorporate a high impact practice into my courses? But so I found this really interesting. If you can move the slide again, Erin. In Pikes Peak Community College has a great resource guide, or Pikes Peak Community College Library has a great resource guide, and they have this slide in it that I thought was really interesting about the elements of high impact practices. And when I looked at this in our NOVATION learning, or our NOVATION project learning community, we had all of these elements. And so I thought maybe this would be more kind of accessible to some faculty, to instead of thinking of, oh, how do I do this huge high impact practice? How do I get it in? Maybe to start with some of the elements of high impact practices. How can you incorporate maybe some of these things from just introducing a challenge or a project, thinking about a multi-stepped project, or how can I make things more interactive, or giving students the opportunity to do an unfamiliar experience, like our students, going out to interview people on campus. How do I have different modes of feedback? So our students in this got all kinds of feedback from each other, from the faculty involved, and then from the community and the stakeholders that they worked with. And then we gave students opportunities for reflection. They were working on a real world problem, something that directly impacted their campus and their community. And then at the end, they were able to share we were all able to share the end product with the public beyond the class. Okay. That's what I had. Oh, and I'll share those resources in the chat too as well.
So what this really boils down to is all of this was not intended to just say, oh, look at us, wasn't that great? We're pleased. We love that it happened. I love working with these people and look forward to doing it again. But the real deal here is the idea of, how does this work for you, right? And I hope that as you take a look at some of these kinds of questions, that you will feel completely comfortable now or in the future to ask them. Push on us, challenge us, think about this, right? Because I wouldn't want you to go into this in some naive way. Practices take work, but is it worth the return on the investment? That's part of what you have to think about. And I wouldn't go into it lightly, right? Before you, as a professional, change your method of teaching, then you ought to be pretty sure in your mind that it's worth the effort, at least worth the risk to be able to get that done. Now, Erin and Stacy have to put up with my sort of oddball way of looking at the world, and Tyler, to a degree, has to do that too. So I guess I would just want to share one thing with you, and that is that I don't really view myself as an educator, right? Education is a vehicle. I view myself as an edifier. The difference between education and edification is it's the building up of people. Right? Education is one way to do it. There are many other ways to be able to do that. But it's the business of building people. And I, for one, believe that's why we are here. The other thing that in my mind is very important is that you can measure learning by what people forget. And one of the things that becomes really important in doing anything like this, such as service learning, is we aspire to a golden moment. We don't always get it, but we aspire to it. And that moment is twofold. One is that we want our clients, those stakeholders that Aaron described who listen to us, we want them to forget that they're dealing with students. We want the information, the conviction that they bring, the experience, the research, and everything to be so pertinent that it's a realistic thing, and you don't stop and say, oh, this is a contribution from a student. This is a contribution, period. And the other is we would like for students to forget that they're students. Because when they are bought in to a mission, when they feel like it's important, the learning takes care of itself. All of a sudden they realize why these things are important. Why do we do what we do? Why do you prepare the way that you do? All of those things take place in context, and it makes it much, much easier. So what do you need to know, right? And our question is, what do you really need to know? You will tell you, look, we will talk about anything that you want to talk about if that's the case. And in my case, that is not just now, but that's in the future. You and I can have a cup of coffee in the cafeteria. I am frequently found there, right? And we can have whatever dialogue you want to have to be able to make that work. And, it may just be, well, sounds like it was easy for you. Okay, well, let us speculate a little bit about, no, it wasn't necessarily, but maybe there are ways that we can get this done. Are there any downsides, and what's in it for you? And I guess I would want to open this discussion by saying, look, a great education experience is a win-win-win, right? And what I mean by that is your students win. It means that the learning process or the institution wins, but it also means that you do too, right? And many of these high impact practices have the opportunity of invigorating what you're doing, causing you to feel much more enthusiastic about coming and doing what you're doing, challenging you to become broader than maybe what you are doing today. There is a real payoff for doing these kinds of things, et cetera. But you need to isolate that. You need to be really clear in your mind. What's in it for me? How's that going to work for me if you're ever going to entertain the idea of being able to do that? So I have these questions. We all are standing by. And if now is not the time, we can make it happen in the future. Tyler, did you see anything by way of chat that we should be talking about and so forth to lead this off? Or are we looking for a courageous person out there to start the conversation?
Nothing yet. I have a whole bunch of questions because there's so many things that kind of sink into with this as an initiative. And you all shared so much in 45 minutes that I'm like, my mind's going in lots of different directions. So I have all kinds of questions, but I'll open it up if anyone else wants to start. If not, I'm going to jump in with something I'm really curious about. So I'm going to pose one then just to get us going.
Okay.
So Stacey, I love what you shared from Pikes Peak in terms of like thinking about what are the common characteristics among high impact practices. And I love so much your all's focus on service learning as kind of an umbrella practice, because in my experience as well, when people think about high impact practices, I really try and push service learning because it forces you to do so many of the other ones. A question I had is, when we think about service learning, we often think about, or it can often be considered service learning relationship to an external client or external partner. And what you all did was really fantastic in terms of making an inward partner that we're going to support the college that has lots of benefits. My question is, did that have any challenges, like to make the service learning partner ECC itself rather than kind of an external client? Did that bring up any challenges to kind of service learning as a project or as a high impact practice for the course?
Anybody want to take that one on?
Well, I know that we were in a bit of a unique position here because, John has a lot of experience in building those connections. And so from my perspective, I would say, I think, John, you led the way in that. So this question probably gets tossed over to you.
Okay, so Tyler, let me be really candid with you. We have worked both internally in the college community and also worked in the wider community I have a strong preference that we work in the wider community. And part of the reason why is that the community can see the work that our people are capable of doing. It's just, it works out really well. We didn't do that because of the pandemic. Many institutions were not able to do that. The challenge that we run into that thankfully we did not experience this time, to be blunt, is that sometimes professors never know when to stop being professors, right? And one of the things that can happen is you can take people and put them in a box faster than you ever thought you would, right? So if we're trying to grow people and say they have great ideas and are doing that, and somebody sort of metaphorically pats them on the head, you know, for their great academic work, it feels demeaning. It doesn't feel like they were carefully listened to. Thankfully, that was not our situation. And I think a part of it was that people were really in the hunt to figure out what could we do to make this even better? What are the things that we can do that are really affordable that we can get to? And I think the discussion got there really quickly.
That's helpful to know. I mean, and that it connects really well to what you shared about viewing students not necessarily just as sort of the student box as well, but your collaborator in a project that actually has impact, is going to work towards something on the campus as well. Another question I'll ask is, in terms of high impact practices, the one that I'll often hear from faculty that people can go back and forth on a lot is navigating student to student collaboration, of a lot of hit or miss to that. And it seems like so far, what you shared is there was a lot of very positive things to that. Aaron, you spoke to students recognizing that they had responsibility in this, that it was going to be a problem if they did not contribute to the group. But a question I had is, were there challenges that came up with that for you all in terms of the student-to-student collaboration? Or were there things that you did that you would really point to say, that's something we'd sort of set up that really contributed to how successful the student collaboration was in the learning community?
I'll just chime in that one thing that really struck me about this was how, when we did the presentation, we really functioned as a team collaboratively. So that wasn't, we kind of erased those student faculty who, delineations. And so we were just working as a team together. And I've never really seen that done before. And it was really kind of rewarding. I think the students recognized that they were part of a team and that we weren't just faculty telling them what to do at that level.
Yeah, in the initial couple of weeks, there was a really big focus on community building, at least in my synchronous Zoom classes that we had. It was a lot of getting to know each other, kind of introspection on what their skills are. And, the students were very open about things that they were concerned about. And it really helped to bring them together, so having some synchronous interaction where they could get to know each other was, I think, pivotal in really being able to build that community, so that it wasn't just that person sitting over there who they are responsible for getting group work done with. It's, oh no, that is Stacy, or that is John. They knew their name, they had a connection. And at least because it's a learning community, they also had a shared experience, which was the shared experience of being an ESL student.
A follow-up question I'll ask, I don't want to dominate, so the last question I'll ask for now is, pragmatically and practically, how much did the students interact with all three of you at once? Because it makes me think a lot about, like, just as an observer of your all's presentation, having the opportunity to hear about it previously, seeing you all collaborate, to me, is a helpful model of what collaboration can look like. Like, is that something students saw as well, or was it mostly sort of, hey, the group was with Aaron, then they were with Aaron Stacy, or then they were with John? Did they interact with the three of you as a unit as well?
Oh yeah. And Stacy popped in to anything that was worthwhile to do. I sat in on many of Aaron's sessions. Aaron was available anytime we were doing this. And I think that what they also began to experience is that when they did deal with this one-on-one, they were hearing a lot of consistency, right, about what we were trying to do and where we were trying to go. And I don't want to minimize the amount of one-on-one kind of contact that we needed to have, right, to talk with students about their individual situations. One of the things about ESL that's interesting is that just inherently, these people have less in common than you might think. We had students from Vietnam, from Poland, from France, from Mexico, and in various different stages of life. So at the early stages, the idea that says we have some broad unifying reason to be together, not so much. I mean, the fact that they're all learning English is profound and important, but it's not necessarily the thing that draws people into community, right? So we had to, purpose does that. When you have a purpose that makes a difference and you feel like you are the one, right? You are the one, only you, and everybody's relying on you to be able to do that. That's how you build communities.
Yeah, there was, I could see a difference once students went from kind of the topic that they thought maybe they wanted to focus on to really realizing that they had a voice and a perspective and some expertise there. That shift was really, really helpful too, because then they started to see how everything came together, and they really bought in because they had ownership, they had expertise, and they knew that they were the one who would be able to share that information. Any other questions?
So while the recording is still on, because I suspect that people are dropping off to get to wherever it is that they need to go and all that sort of thing, just the option is available. I drink a lot of coffee. And it's a little more expensive these days in the cafeteria, but everything is. So that's fine. If you want to talk, let's find a time to do that. We'll find a place in the cafeteria. We can talk it through. I think Aaron and Stacy operate with slightly different parameters and schedules and all that sort of thing. But I think I can speak for them that they are willing to help as well. So you let us know.
Absolutely. And we're also willing to share that final NOVATION project, correct? So everybody can see what the final product looked like. Am I correct in that, John and Stacy?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we can share that as well if you want to see kind of not just theory of how we made it happen, but what the final product was.
And I'm always happy to talk about more collaborative projects with faculty and how librarians can be do a deeper integration with you if you're interested.